4, 5, 6. Hey guys, welcome to the special episode of the British Electric Blues Show. It's my pleasure to introduce to you a very good friend of mine, John Maydon. Now this is guerrilla style recording live streaming because we're using our iPad. Normally I use a camera and my laptop, so if I'm going this way, it's all around. It's back to front, this way or that way. So just get with us. So just bear with us. So hold on while I get the chat up. Hold on, guys. Are we live? Here we are. So look, we have somebody already waiting for us.
Okay.
D-Tube,
whoever that is.
D-Tube is from Australia. Look, are you still there, D-Tube? Can you just send me a message in the chat, please? Just to see if everything's working fine, because I've got my phone for the chat. Hey guys, D-Tube is from Australia, so he's a good friend of the channel. And Simon Williams, my co-host, who's in the UK, might jump on.
Cool.
Because he gets up early, so it's about 5 o'clock in the UK. So he might join us. So we've got one person watching, so that's okay. So we'll just hang around for a couple of minutes. We'll just waste a bit of time.
Yeah.
Tell people what you've been doing today. You've been working, and I've been mucking around.
Selling guitars and amplifiers and strings, guitar picks.
Fantastic.
Microphones.
Awesome.
All the usual stuff in the store.
So this is the first time I've actually done an interview, John, live with someone next to me. So it's kind of funny because I've got to look at you, but also look at the camera too. So yeah. So if anyone's watching the replay and it's trying to work out what John and Andrew are doing, we're actually together in real life.
We are. See, look,
we're in real life. So we're normally behind separate cameras. But there's no one here in the chat, so that's okay. So we can waste a bit of time. So fantastic. So we'll just wait for someone to come in. But look, seriously, I appreciate you taking a bit of time out to come and spend some time with me. As I was saying to you before off air, I've been talking about you coming onto our channel with my co-host about a year ago.
Okay, yeah. I didn't even know about this until last week.
So no, well, no.
All surprises.
Because we've been underground. So I've been doing this channel for a couple of years with a good friend of mine, Carl Van Vilsenbos. You might know Carl. You might. Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I'm better at remembering people by what they play than their names, which is really,
what
they drive. Or...
Well, he's got a funny name anyway for a starter, so I thought maybe you would recognise the name. But no, he's a hot guitarist. He lived out in Raglan for a long time.
Okay. Is he a friend of Cara Graham's?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I know.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Waikato Regional Council.
I don't know, but Carl's selling real estate now. Okay. And the good thing about Carl, he worked here with me. As my sales rep for a while. We were talking about music. In fact, I hired him because he was a guitar player. That was the only reason why I hired him. It had nothing to do with his experience in our business or anything like that. Yeah. He saw my guitar when he came for the job interview. We had the interview. He said, "Can I play your guitar?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I gave it to him. And I said, "Man, you've got the job."
Yeah, well, that's what happens. It's about what you know.
Well, what I wanted was to speak to somebody about music, and clearly, he was a blues guy. I could see that in his chops. But anyway, to cut a long story short, John, he went to America to try and break into the music business. Went to Texas and had a rude awakening because he said he's seen some guys that could do some Stevie Ray Vaughan chops here in New Zealand. He said in America, there's a whole line of them.
Yep. Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, a whole line of cats.
Better off being a big fish in a small sea. Like get more.
Yeah. And I kind of appreciate the fact, though, that he spent 10 years in the States, because he gives a bit of credibility to some of the things that I like in blues music, because he's a Kiwi, he's been there.
Yep.
So he can sort of pass that on, pass some of those experiences on. And that's always an important thing. So anyway, we decided after he left here that we would do a show based around the Rolling Stones. And it sort of went from there. We did a few shows together. The real estate business got in the way, so he couldn't jump on and do the release. So another guy from the UK, who was a very good friend of the channel, stuck his hand up and said, "I'll join you."
Oh, cool.
So he's a blues nut too, and he's in Led Zeppelin in Newport in 1972.
Yeah.
You know, so he offers some authenticity to the channel too.
Yeah.
Just like you're offering some authenticity to the channel today. So we appreciate that. So I've done a lot of talking, and this show specifically is about you. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and you hopefully are going to be upfront and honest.
Yeah. Tell you some stories.
And share some insights into what it's like being a gigging musician in New Zealand over a period of time, the difficulty, the ups and downs. So I suppose, John, we have to start off with the original question that everyone asks. How did it begin?
Well, when I was a little boy, I saw some bands on television. I saw the Beatles and I saw Elvis. He wasn't a band, but and music was just, we always had music in the house. So we had a piano, so I used to go and tinker on the piano. And because I was the youngest, I was pretty much left to my own devices. So Dad had already raised 4 children, so he did his best with me, and every now and then he took an interest and we did stuff together. But yeah, that was kind of how it all began. And I had a teacher at school when I was in, I guess it's year 4, year 5, and he was a folkie, and he had a guitar, and he had long hair, and he wore Beatle boots.
So that was cool.
I just thought he was the coolest. I don't even know if he's still around. I don't even know his first name, So he was, and he played a guitar, Echo. Remember the Echo?
Yep.
Echo guitars, and he said to us at school, "Look, I'll do guitar after school if you kids are interested." And we just had a couple of guitars floating around the place, and we started off doing that. And I was the only kid that sort of carried on playing, but it was fun, And he taught us. He taught us about 5 chords, and that was enough to get into trouble back then.
Sure. So I'm just interested. So when did you see the Beatles?
So I saw them on telly. I think I saw with my sister. Probably the first words I learned was probably when I was about 2. Was I didn't learn "Hello, my name's John." I learned John, George, and Ringo. They were like the first.
Wow.
We talked to it, and then my father used to make fun of him, saying, "Oh, I want to hold your hand," and that wasn't a very intelligent lyric.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that was what we had back in the 60s, and the Beatles were more sort of like, my sister had a scrapbook and she had photos. She cut out of magazines, I guess. I don't know what magazine she bought, and she said, "This guy's Elvis," and he looked all right, and then she did a picture of this guy with glasses, and his name was John.
I'm always interested when people talk about the Beatles as a significant influence on their music development or their interest in music. Clearly, I have an experience with the Beatles too. But one of the things that comes to my mind was a couple of years ago watching the Tom Petty documentary, and Tom Petty said something I think is really interesting. Tom Petty loved Elvis.
Yep, I think everybody does.
And loved music, and wanted to get into music, but couldn't quite work out how to get it. It wasn't until he saw the Beatles perform in a band on the Ed Sullivan Show when he realised that's how you do it.
Yep.
You get a band.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I'm sorry for interrupting you. I'm just hopefully just making sure that we aren't missing anyone in the chat. So it's okay. It's cool.
So I was going to say, so living in Moscow, we had this advantage. There was a guy called Joe Brown, and he ran these competitions in the Miss New Zealand show.
Oh, wow.
And he had bands with him.
Wow.
So when we got to intermediate school, which was 2 years after I first had a guitar, he would bring the bands to school, and we were willing to pay 20 cents to get in. And we got to see the top New Zealand entertainment at the time. Whatever was touring, he toured it with us. And so we got to see a really great bands, and they had a backing band and all the top New Zealand singers. So we had people like John Grinnell, Eddie Lowe, all those sorts of people. So it was awesome.
Columbus?
He was probably living in Australia at the time. I'm not sure. I remember watching Ray Columbus when I was really young on Ready Steady Go or something.
Okay.
And he was pretty cool. Like, he was a bit darker because he was doing the blues and he was doing the Rolling Stones sort of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So you were seeing top-notch professional musicians who were gigging regularly right in front of you. You were seeing how it was done.
Yep.
You saw how a bass and a drummer interacted.
With a pedal steel, I think they had, and electric guitars and all sorts of stuff.
And that locked you into it?
Oh, yeah, that was this pulling me in. It was like throwing the bait out, here we are, this is a bit more, what else have you got? And then of course we had the school, because Moscow was only a small place at the time, we had a band that used to come and rehearse at the school. So we got to hear them one day. The headmaster said, okay, well, the deal is you have to do a performance once a year for the children.
Okay, so I'm just going to interrupt you. We do have a very good friend of the channel watching us. His name is Arvin, and he's saying hi to you. So,
hi, Arvin.
Yeah, Arvin is from Canada, so he's a good friend of the channel. Can you hear us okay, Arvin? Are we coming across all right? If you can acknowledge us in the chat, I'd be great. So you missed the introduction. So this is streaming on the fly. We're together. There's no cameras. There's one camera. So yeah, I'll date D-Tube's in there. So that's good. That's fantastic. It's important that people hear you.
That's right.
It's important that people hear you because we're going to get a treat later on. Yep, sounds good. Mate, you guys are awesome. So we'll get back to it. Sit back and enjoy the show. If you guys have any questions for John, fire them through, and I hope we'll get to them. We'll try to. Okay, so carry on, buddy.
So this band got up and they played the Rolling Stones and John Fogerty and stuff like that, and it was loud. And it was when you were 11 and you're hearing a rock band in your school hall. I mean, that was mind blowing. It was just the kids went crazy, and that's when we decided they had a music competition. We're going to have a talent quest, and someone knew that I knew a bit about guitar, so that was the first band. So I was about 12, I think.
Wow.
And we started jamming. And
so were you nervous at any stage about getting up on? Was there any kind of doubt there that you could do it, or were you just one of these guys that said, yeah,
I can do that, let me do it?
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been nervous when you know you're going up and it's the first place and you've never been there before, so it's an environment you're not sure of.
Sure.
And when you get up in front of all your school kids, so we've got up in front of all the school kids at lunchtime. That was nerve-wracking. That was pretty, we were nervous. But we'd rehearsed, so we knew what we were doing. But it was just one of those things, if someone threw something or laughed at us, when you're 12 or 13, that could be it.
So before you were on stage, you were just John, normal John.
Yeah.
After the gig, you were John super cool, I bet.
Oh,
Everybody wanted to know you, I'm sure. Because my experience when I watched bands when I was growing up, I was never on stage at school, but I certainly wanted to be around the guys that did perform because I thought they were cool.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't very good at rugby.
Yeah.
And I was average at football.
Okay, but you were good at.
But I was good at playing. So jumping it forward 2 years, by then I was starting to get pretty good with the guitar, and we had a band. That band continued, and a few people dropped in and dropped out. And by the time we got to, 14-year-old boys, 15-year-old boys in year 10, we had a repertoire. We'd been practicing, and we'd learned up about 16 songs, I think. Kinks, the Stones, the Beatles, Deep Purple, all that. We had a drummer, and we had enough equipment for us to play ourselves. We didn't have a PA, so then we went back to the same school and we did school dances. So we had girls screaming, throwing things, and it was quite different. That was a different experience again. We did that for a few years, playing intermediate dances and youth group things.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
So back then, was there any preference as far as guitars go with you? Were you a Gibson man? Were you a
I didn't know the brands. No. I just knew the shapes.
Okay.
So, we knew that someone had a shape that was like a Stratocaster. We didn't know it was a Stratocaster.
Okay.
And we knew that there was a Gibson shape. And I had this more idea that, one was a lead guitar and one was a rhythm guitar. I had no idea that they were different.
Okay.
And by then I was playing bass. I went to bass for a few years because our band didn't have a bass player, and I saw a bass for sale, and I thought, well, that looks interesting. Let's give that a go.
So you were the Paul McCartney of the band there for a while.
So I could sing and play bass. So
Yep.
that was, relatively useful. And the other guitar player was particularly good, Paul Ockwell. He lives in Auckland now, and he was really good at listening to the radio and listening to records and just pulling out the licks. He could play Richie Blackmore stuff. He started doing Peter Frampton stuff. In fact, he built his own mouth tube. It was amazing.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is one of the key things that we talk about in our shows. What guitar players and what musicians were doing before the advent of YouTube, because we're really spoiled now. If you want to know a song, if you're a young cat and you want to pick up the guitar, you don't necessarily have to go and see John Maydon for guitar lessons. You can just whack onto YouTube and go for it. So you were doing what Eric Clapton and Keith Richards and everyone else was doing. You were listening to the records.
Yep.
Because
taping them listen to the radio. Here's our song. Push record. Let's get this down.
And does it sound like it? And that's how you guys were doing it, the old-fashioned way.
Yep.
Wow.
And what's that sound? What kind of effect is? And when we were like in the 5th form, so that's year 11?
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Ian Chalmers, who lives in Dunedin, and he still hires out gear, he had all this cool band gear that nobody else had, and he lent it to us. He put it up in our mate's shed. It was amazing. And we were like kids in a candy store, and he had this effect pedal called a phaser. And so we recorded the song that we wrote, which was a pretty dumb song, but we thought it was pretty cool. And we had the phaser, and we played it to the kids at school.
And they went, wow,
that's not you. Because the phaser had only just come out. It was a really more effective message. Nah, you just put it on, and you said, no, that's us. That's us. We had another friend that had a really good he had a really good cassette recorder with a really nice condenser mic. So I don't know what he was recording, but it was cool.
So do you think you were better served as a musician and a guitar player doing it using your ear than you think that maybe modern musicians are, where they need to visually see something? And the reason why I'm asking you that question is because my co-host likes to talk about when they were recording in the studio back in, right up until the 80s, all the engineers and the producers would only hear what was being played. Now today, when you're recording, they're looking at computer programs, they're seeing stuff. You understand what I mean? So they're seeing gaps rather than hearing them and saying, we've got to put something there.
Yeah. So hearing, well, we listened to recordings intensely. Like after school, we would mess around with recordings. Another friend of mine who's not with us anymore, he gave me all his records. He says, John, I want you to put this on tape for me. He was older. He was my sister's friend. And so I given this music that no other child of my age I knew had access to. It was Lou Reed.
Wow.
Hot Chocolate.
Wow.
David Bowie live.
So you were listening to all this cool stuff while everyone was listening to top 40, top 10,
yeah.
which is back a few years ago. It was okay.
Yeah, it was the Beatles and all that stuff. And of course, all my friends' older brothers had Led Zeppelin records, so we thought that was pretty mind blowing. And I had a job, and so I could buy records, so I could, if I found something I liked, I'd go out and would buy it.
Yeah.
But having access, like Lou Reed was just like, wow, this cat's different. I've never heard anything like that before. And just, he wasn't singing, he was talking and playing guitar. He was like.
So what do you think about? I'm glad again that, and this is not scripted, guys. So I'm glad that you've mentioned Lou Reed, because again, my co-host mentions this often when we talk about the simplicity of playing music.
Yeah.
So Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground were a reaction from the complicatedness that was happening with some bands at that time.
Probably rock stuff.
Yes. So it was just like two chords.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to play a bass, it was just.
Yeah. Boom, boom. Yeah. Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? So.
And I had another friend who's married to a very famous lawyer in New Zealand, and he was into the prog stuff, so he introduced us to Genesis. Wow. He put this stuff on. We're going, yeah, well, I guess some people like it. Some people likes it. It's not my cup of tea, but we appreciated the musicianship of it. But to me, it was like, you could do all that with classical instruments. Why are they doing it with rock instruments? Because I didn't quite get it at the time. I wasn't sophisticated in my taste in music.
No, I think what you've said resonates with me too, because I've got some friends who are Dream Theater nuts.
Oh yeah, another one.
And I tried to get into Dream Theater to be part of the Cool Gang a few years ago with some of my mates. And no disrespect to Dream Theater, and no disrespect to Rush and progressive rock, but in my opinion, it sounds too mechanical.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really well thought out, overthought.
Yes.
And it's like, in our day, we had a band called Kansas, who Kerry Livgren's a heavy influence on the Dream Theater guys, John Petrucci,
yes.
I think it is.
Yep.
I can't remember. But anyway, when I heard Carry On the Sun, I thought, man, those guys are onto it. They're really good musicians. They're changing tempo, listening to all that cool stuff. But at the same time, I thought, and I bought the Kansas album, and I quite like the stories. I love stories. It was a story. It was a concept.
Yeah.
So you kind of got into that side of it, but But then Tom Petty came on the scene, and that was again the three chords of truth. Back to that kind of. This is cool.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that's, for me, that's what I like about blues music and rock and roll generally. The fact that you potentially listen to what could be a mistake.
Yeah.
Or even, in fact, there are mistakes.
Yeah, kept in there deliberately because they had a better vibe.
Yeah. So I like that. But again, we've got to make it clear, if there's anyone out there watching the channel that are Dream Theater and progressive rock fans, we're not disrespecting that. We're just saying that.
Different.
Yeah, we're just making a distinction between that and, say, blues music and rock and roll. So.
And that's like Queen as well. So
yeah.
I never got Queen.
No.
I thought they were really great players. Freddie is an amazing performer, and they're incredible musicians. There's no doubt about it. They're studied hard. They're virtuosos. But I always thought, this is quite jerky, and it's, it doesn't kind of fill my understanding of, jumping jack flash. It's just a groove, it's just going for it, and that's kind of the stuff I was into,
Yeah. So I forgot to mention, John, we're streaming live on YouTube, the British Electric Blues channel, and we're also streaming live on the All Things Eric Clapton Facebook page. So if people aren't going to be jumping on and making comments, they tend to, because a lot of the people that are members of that group are on the other side of the world.
So when you mention Eric Clapton, you brought in a whole new thing, a memory of mine. And that's when I was like 15, I had some older friends, musicians, and they said, we haven't got a bass player this weekend, would you come around and jam with us? And I thought, all right. I can do that. I was nervous, but I turned up because I was a wee bit cocky. And of course, this guy had a Fender Strat. And that was the first time I'd ever seen a Fender Strat.
Really?
Yeah. And they were older boys, so we're thinking, just started university, these boys, and they were doing things like smoking.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I hope Dad's not going to walk in any moment now. It was their house. And and they had a drink, and they were cool. And these guys suddenly started playing a song called After Midnight.
Wow.
And I went, this is different. And he says, oh, you can do this, John. Just show me what to do. Yeah. And then they started playing cocaine. And I knew cocaine because we kind of knew what J.J. Cale was. But I didn't know that J.J. Cale had this other complete body of work. And of course, and they knew J.J. Cale songs. So here was me playing around with these older cats, and I was just playing the bass. And I just dug it. And I thought, and after that, that's when you talk about being buzzed. I was awake for like 6 or 7 hours after that. I couldn't sleep. The experience was so older guys, more sophisticated, and had more groove, whereas young guys are just keeping it together. We're just holding it together. That's the difference,
So you're talking about the difference between being ahead of the beat, and then Keith Richards loves to talk about this, and then being behind the beat.
And these guys knew what a backbeat was.
Okay. So that's interesting. So that obviously came with a bit of age, bit of experience, and everything else that people probably want to rush at the beginning.
Yeah, and underplaying. That was the first time I experienced underplaying. So less is more. The gaps are where the music is.
Yeah, interesting. That's interesting.
You don't have to play 4 notes in a bar.
No.
One's fine, maybe 2.
So did you decide then you were going to pursue a career in music? Was it was that something that you wanted to do?
I would have loved to, but I had no idea how to do it. No idea whatsoever. However, that progressed to the point where I was in the situation where I became where I am now. So.
Well, that's right. So if a lot of people don't realise this, John's a very humble guy, and he is an established artist in the music scene, not only in Hamilton, not only in the Waikato, but in New Zealand. So John's been around for a few years of the local blues club, performs regularly, has a duo, 3 or 4 other bands that that he's involved in. So it's my pleasure to say that we are playing someone that is recognised as as someone that's a key component to the music industry here in our town. So we're grateful to have him and pass on that experience, his lessons. So John won't tell you that, but I will.
Thank you. That's nice.
I'll tell the truth.
Yeah.
But before we start carrying on a little bit more, when I met you, we were talking about Clapton, and one of the key things that you and I agreed about Eric Clapton is that he was a wonderful artist in the sense that he was a gateway artist. I like that. I like the fact that, and again, Keith Richards as an example, and Jimmy Page, all these British blues guys who loved black, Chicago blues or Delta blues. They knew all about it. They were disciples. Peter Green, they all said the same thing, didn't they?
Yeah.
Don't listen to us.
Go back to the original.
Go back, and most of those guys told the truth right from the word go. And I like that, because if you do get into Eric Clapton, somewhere sooner or later, you're going to come across him saying, go and listen to Robert Johnson.
Yes, yeah. This mystical man.
Okay, so let's go back then. So did you listen to Robert Johnson at an early age?
I possibly may have, but my father was classical music nut. My sister, God bless her, she just kept buying records and records and records.
Wow.
And we just had this record collection before I could buy records. And so we had this thing called Solid Hits.
Yes.
And I remember the first time I heard Get Her On by T-Rex. Now that's an interesting groove, because that's an old groove. Well, in the 70s, we were quite sophisticated, but he was locking into something that was probably the Texas guy. His name escapes me all of a sudden, but used to do the one Bo Diddley.
Bo Diddley.
Yeah.
Bo Diddley,
So,
yeah.
And of course John Lee Hooker.
Yeah.
And so those sort of sounds, and of course David Bowie said that Jean Genie was basically a John Lee Hooker song.
That's correct.
And if you see the live version of him playing it on some show, he's playing the harp, and it's really earthy and it's gritty. It's not the slick, sophisticated recording of what he put out on vinyl. But I remember my sister bought this album by Charlie.
Yeah.
So that was probably the first kind of American blues I had heard, other than what you heard from Woodstock. So of course you hear and now their name escapes me. Janis Joplin.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So all that was alluding to all that sort of music. And then of course you hear Eric Clapton, and then they talk about where they came from and their roots. And I remember you had to read a book called, I used to get the Beat Instrumental magazine.
Yep.
So I started getting that because I got sick of getting Wizard. And before I had Wizard, I had Victor and Dino and Danny and all that. And I mean, that's when we started getting this information. To me, that was when I started doing some research. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
What's this guy talking about? What is a Marshall JCM?
Yeah.
Whatever, And I mean, I think that's, you slowly get there over time. And I started working in a music school after I left the post. When I was teaching guitar, I ended up teaching guitar. I was told I had to go and teach guitar by a guy, John Fleury, a friend of mine who lives in Waikato Island. He was moved to Auckland. He didn't want to keep teaching, so I took over his job. I was working in a dead end. Well, it wasn't a dead end, but it was what everyone did, a government job.
Sure.
Get a job, son.
Yeah.
You'll be right for life. It's those people that made redundant.
Yeah.
Well, I can't be made redundant. I just take on more students if I think if I think I'm running out of money. But the point that I was making was, so of course you started working in that, meeting more musicians. Once you start working in the music shop, the door opens to all this other stuff. Another guy, Tama Taito, who lives in Eden, he used to come in when we were open Friday nights, and he was a real blues head. He loved Santana and all this stuff. And he'd sit there with me and we'd pull out the acoustics and we'd just jam. And I think that's keep moving in more through the door into that area, But I don't think I ever got to hear any authentic blues until I was a lot older,
Yeah, a little bit like me. I again, it's a parallel with me too. I never really, I was listening to Get Your Ya-Ya's Out and Cream and all this stuff and Led Zeppelin right through until and Jimi Hendrix until my mid-20s. It wasn't until then and the advent of the internet where you could get access to that music where I started actually listening to Robert Johnson for the first time and a lot of Muddy Water stuff. I heard a couple of things, don't get me wrong, there was always something around. But this is one of the great things that I love about social media, John, one of the positives. And Spotify.
Yeah, amazing.
There's no excuse for any cat not being able to do their music research now.
No, that's right, exactly. And I remember one day we had a show on telly. It was an anniversary concert for John Maydon and the Blues Breakers. So this would have been like 1984, 85, I can't remember exactly. And this guy came on called Hey Guy with his mate, the harmonica player. And his name,
Yes, I know the guy. They did a blue and acoustic album.
Good. Junior Wells.
That's
and they, first of all we saw John Mayle with his band, and they were fantastic. And Mick Taylor was playing with them, and I always loved his guitar playing because I knew him from the Rolling Stones.
So we've got another friend of ours in the chat saying hello, Deja Vudu's from Australia. G'day, Deja Vudu. Thanks for joining us.
I think I may have met them at a beach shop.
Oh wow.
I'm not sure. If they've ever played a beach shop.
Well, Deja Vudu's in Australia. So, have you ever been to New Zealand, Deja Voodoo?
That rings bell. Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah, so there you go. So then you saw, and then Etta James came up,
Wow.
and then Sippy Wallace. And Sippy Wallace on that stage was very, very elderly. And she got up and sang it hard out, and that was very inspiring because I'd never seen anything like that, and it wasn't what I was expecting to hear from a lady of that age, because we used to get dragged off to church, and ladies of that age just warbled out songs and out of tune. It was very uninteresting. To see someone like that actually do something that was kick-ass, it was awesome.
Wow.
So that's an amazing show, and it's available now on YouTube. You can watch it, but we only got to see it once. It was that. I'll never get to see. Back in those days, we didn't have record us the video. We couldn't do anything. We just got the show, and that was it. So that was another. We talk about signposts. So these are all little signposts that point you in that this is more exciting. This is better. There's more to it. There's more depth here. Keep digging.
Well, my personal experience over the last 10, 15 years, John, I don't mind telling you and being honest, my music is going back more and more. I'm afraid I'm not seeing anything in the future.
Yeah.
Unless there are some good cats out there like Philip Sace, and John. Yeah. There's some good modern cats out there playing. Don't get me wrong, but generally, I don't listen or pay any attention to pop music. All my resources and energy is spent just going back to as much of these old guys and girls as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, like that Martin Scorsese series is amazing. Gazelles.
Yeah.
And then I just had no idea who this guy was. Phenomenal player, Skip James.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that guy really had the mojo, and he was before Robert Johnson.
Yes.
And he could really play the fingerstyle guitar. He was a lovely style. So people like that. How would you have found that out, being a little white boy in Moscow, who Skip James was? Without the use of, the internet or anything like that.
No. Well, you're not going to. And again, Skip James, a good friend of mine, told me about Skip James only about 8 years ago. So I'm honest.
Yeah, me too.
I'm an honest guy when it comes to music, anyway. But I didn't know Skip James until Carl told me.
Yeah.
Have you heard Skip James? No. So I went home.
Yeah.
That was my homework for an hour. Listened, and I was blown away.
Yeah. And he just threw it all away to become a minister. He got paid $40, and that was incredible, And that was obviously, there were other things that probably being a minister was safer back then. I don't know why. I don't understand what his motives were. He was playing the devil's music, so he might have been really drawn and torn, a tortured soul, which obviously came out in his playing anyway.
Yeah, I think that kind of comes out in that documentary that they released recently on Robert Johnson on Netflix. About this blues man and what a blues man was in the 30s and how they were mistreated and mistrusted, and if you were a friend of a blues man, So John's not my friend, guys, either. All right, okay, so. But if you were friends with a blues man,
right.
you were, there was something going on. You were, and if there was some kind of repercussion from that, you can't kind of blame these guys, can you?
Well, I was brought up like the other side of my life. I was brought up through the church, so we were told that in the mid-70s that rock and roll was the devil's music.
Yeah.
I remember playing at Friends 21st and people stopping us and saying, "You'll stop playing this devil music."
Wow.
And when I think about it now, we all know that was just racist. That was just that they were taught that. They didn't know that. There was no sign from God to say this was the devil's music. There's God's children all playing it. So often, I remember I had this epiphany when I was probably 20. I went through this really zealous stage and I burnt all my records. I took them to the beach and I burnt them all. I burnt Led Zeppelin. I burnt anybody that someone told me, no, he's a Satan worshipper. And it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I was just very naive, and I spent too much time doing what other people suggested I do. I was a pleaser. So when I grew up, of course, I own all that.
But again, there's some similarities in your story with me too, because there have been examples in my life where I've thrown away some CDs, and I'm that old to remember cassette tapes, driving along in my Capri, my Ford Capri, throwing out a couple of CDs, but I mean, cassette tapes.
I saw those on the road.
Yeah.
Just in the sun with the tape everywhere. I thought, oh, someone's tape recorder's jammed up again.
But what I like about these experiences that we're all sharing, and probably some of the guys in the chat may have had similar experiences, goes to prove how powerful music is.
Oh yeah.
I remember specifically my mum telling me to be careful when I told. She didn't mind me being a Beatles nut.
Yeah.
But when I said to her that I was listening to the Rolling Stones.
Oh yeah, they were.
Now this was in 1981 when they'd released Tattoo You.
Oh yeah.
But when I said that I was listening to the Rolling Stones, she said, be careful because there's something about them. Because she remembered the Rolling Stones from 69, 70.
When they did Satanic Majesties.
And when they had the stabbing at Altamont.
Yeah.
From the Dangerous Band.
Okay, so this one here, this is a story that not many people know. Okay, so when I was about 17, I came home, I had the Who's Greatest Hits.
Wow.
And I put on Magic Bus.
Wow.
And I astral projected. And
wow.
I never did drugs. And
wow.
I didn't know what was happening. But I remember flying around the lounge. Now, I don't know if it was an out-of-body experience or a physical experience, but I remember Dad walking in the room, and I remember feeling really bad and stopping whatever was going on, and he just looked at me and
you okay, John?
Shook his head and walked out the door again.
Wow.
And then of course, because I was so into my music, they said, "Do you think music is dragging you?" And I went, "No, I don't think so. No, I think I'm but that elder body experience was more to do with the fact that I'd been doing lots of things. I was very tired. I probably only had 2 or 3 hours sleep, and the music just took me somewhere completely different. And it's never happened again. Except it almost happened at a church camp.
Wow.
And this is where I understand how music can be used to manipulate people.
Oh yeah. Look, and there's no argument there. There's no argument from me. And that's why we have a program and we talk about social media, because one of the key things for our channel, John, is that we say that music has the ability to be positive in people's lives.
Yes.
And we can't understand why people want to make negative comments. If you're going to play the guitar today for us, and you will soon,
Yep.
and you put something up saying, this is how I play a song, why would someone say you, and not only just say you're playing it wrong, attack you?
Yeah.
And say, and swear, and so anyway, our friends of the channel, we know, and we say, well, look, it's our small contribution to the music and social media that we try and remain positive. Now, of course, we're critical. For example, if you want to talk about Eric Clapton and the bad times that he had, the drug use, and how he was an absolute pain in the ass for a lot of people when he was on the booze, we talk about that. Yeah. But we don't say, we're not just fanboys. Yeah. If you want to be critical
Keeping
about
it real.
Yeah. Be critical, and offer your opinion. That's why sometimes you have to back up your opinion, because we've said some things on the show and people have taken it out of context.
Well, I've read a lot of Eric Clapton books. I'm a big Clapton fan. Most of those people you mentioned I am a fan of. And I've never walked in his shoes, and for him to walk in his shoes is an opportunity for someone else. And he got where he got today. He's still alive. He's a survivor. He's done some great things, and I think he's on the right track.
Well, what I like about his book specifically is he makes it very clear he was a difficult person. So everyone else has said it,
Yeah.
but he's saying, I know I was, and he goes out of his way to make up to the people that he knows that he made it. So that's why they did the Cream reunion concert in 2005 to give Ginger Baker some money.
Yeah.
And he did that gig with John Maydon a few years ago, you know, because he realised actually that first album that he did with John Maydon, the Bluesbreaker Beano album, everyone was going on about it, and he just thought it was just a record.
That's right, it's another step in it.
Yeah.
We'll keep on moving.
Yeah, but then he realised, well, I actually have to go back and acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, maybe I have been sort of like, oh, it's okay, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and people were saying, why are you treating it like that? You know, you pompous, whatever. But he wasn't thinking that purposely, but he was, you know, so that's why he goes back and plays with John Mayle to say, well, look, maybe I left John Mayle in a bad way too.
Yeah, and I think we all make mistakes. We all regret. There's lots of musical things I've done I regret, and I think
You want to share?
Well,
one of them?
Well,
just one.
Well, one.
You want to think about it because you've got tons of them.
Well, you know, having, you know, like the some of the stuff, doing some things that I probably shouldn't have done to people.
Yeah.
Maybe something's. I'm a very spontaneous person. I'm impulsive, so I tend to probably react before I think about things. You know, and I think I'm not going to talk about anyone specifically.
Yeah, well, that's
but I mean, in music, you know, music is an emotional thing. So if you're charged on stage or something, and you know, there's times when you probably do things that you know you'd rather walk away from, and you just don't carry. You learn from that. And I mean, I think like I said, playing with older musicians, I was lucky in many ways that older musicians actually took an interest in me. And when I was like 20 years old, 22 years old, an older band, a dance band, took me on to be their bass player, and they were making really good money, and they were playing every weekend, and everything was going really, really well. And I was looking at buying more gear, and then one night I got a copy. And I thought, well, I'm in this band. They basically said, you're in this band. The other guy's not coming back. I got cocky, and I got a bit clever on bass. And they didn't need that clever bass playing. They were a different kind of band. And of course, the next week I got the story, oh, well, the other bass player's coming back. That was their way of, and I learned a lesson that day, you know, so, and that's just one of those things, you know, so life happens like that. It was a good lesson for me.
It's interesting you should say that because, I'm trying to think anyway, his name might come to me in the course of the show. But anyway, he's a friend of my friend, Carl, who we spoke about earlier in the show. And he's a builder. But anyway, while he was building, when he was a young guy, an apprentice builder, he was a drummer. And he used to drum in a band at the Cosy Club on a Saturday night. And on a Saturday night at the Cosmopolitan Club, it was when the members would come and they would do the dancing, ballroom dancing and stuff like that. Yeah. Lance was his name, and his surname, you might even know him. He's in America now anyway. So he was a hot drummer, but he was just, you know, doing the, you know, just drumming, you know, with these older guys. Yeah. But he was getting paid lots of money.
Yeah, that's right. The money was amazing.
He was making more money drumming. And you know, anyway, I don't know specific details, but he was earning shitloads of money drumming compared to being an apprentice builder. Anyway, you know, he was doing this for 6 months, and then he started going ting ting. Started doing putting a bit of Ginger Baker stuff in there. Same thing. Yeah. See you later, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it? That was a valuable lesson. The thing was, when I was playing in the 80s, I was playing in a covers band that was very popular with the students. And we got all the student balls, we just about sewed the whole lot up. In Dunedin, that was very lucrative times. And for that 6-week ball season, you play the netball, the medball, all these other balls. I was getting nearly $1,000 a week playing in this. Getting this when I was earning like $400 a week in a day, and it just didn't make any sense whatsoever. And yet there were other people, of course, the people that were really struggling, like in Dunedin, doing their own music. They were going into the red, recording music. They still are in the red. And I won't mention their names, but they've paid a big price for following their different direction, you know.
Again, I'm glad you've said that, because there's a channel that I watch, and it's Nez Says. And Nez Says, Dave Nesbitt is the guy, and he's based in New York City. Anyway, he's got lots of guitars. And guess what? He made all his money by playing in covers bands, playing at weddings, playing at all these things that you... So he was making a ton of money playing, you know, and he speaks about that often on his channel. You know, people say, you know, all these guitars you've got, and he said, well, you know, playing in the covers band. You know, don't knock that as a source of income. He doesn't have any regrets about the fact that he didn't do anything original, because he realised that he was a good guitarist. He was suited to be in a covers band, and at the end of the day, you know, paying your bills.
That's right. And we recorded our own songs when we played them on student radio. We didn't get any money for it. We had a lot of fun doing it.
We've got Nelson saying hello to you. Nelson is from the United States. He's a friend of the channel too. Thanks for joining us. So I've got a good friend of mine here, John, and we're just hanging out, talking a bit about music. So soon John's going to pick up some guitars and talk about some guitars and maybe some of his favorite tunes.
Oh, possibly.
Maybe some of your original tunes.
I don't know.
But the floor is yours, my friend. You know, if you want to pick up the guitar anytime soon, you're more than welcome. So when did you move up to the Waikato?
So I moved up to Waikato in 2003. So both my parents had passed on, and my children were very young.
Cool.
And they had young grandparents up here. So it made perfect sense for them to enjoy having grandparents. I never had grandparents.
Mate, that relationship's
that's special, and it's still here.
It's the best one, mate. Grandparents and grandchildren. And
of course, Chris is my wife's father. He's a folkie, and the children are enjoying his stuff. And it's lovely scene, folk scene. So, and some blues is folk music as well. So we get to share a bit together, you know. So it works out very well.
So, do you have a favourite type of music? Am I allowed to ask you that?
I would say blues is closest to my heart. Blues and rock, definitely. Blues, rock, blues. But I like country music. I like the stories in country music. I love Willie Nelson and that kind of Johnny Cash. That sort of stuff, like Waylon Jennings. But I don't have scripted records, but I appreciate the tunes and the stories and all that sort of stuff. And I remember back in the day, you know, in Moscow, we had a lot of country music. So we had kind of country and both kinds of music. So, and the Joe Brown thing was very based on that too. So
yeah.
So, and we didn't really put music into genres as such. I just used to think, this has got a beat, this is cool, this is a bit artificial, you know. Sometimes you just think, this is just sanitized, this is, you know. And then when you do research and you find out how some songs are written, suddenly the song becomes more appealing. This is interesting. When you do your research, you go, such and such a song, what was all that about? And then you find out, that was a true story, and then it suddenly becomes meaningful. So I think, and another friend who's got a classic quote, and it always comes back to me when I'm about to diss something, and I stop and I bite my tongue, and she says, because she's a girl, at least they're out there doing it. And that's a reminder that if we're just sitting on our bums pointing the finger at something we don't like. We've got to think about, well, what's that person, where's the thing? And they're out there doing it. We're just sitting there criticising. So therefore, we have to look at the other way. I think that's a valuable lesson in life.
Yeah, again, I think that's a key thing that you've brought up, because that's something I've experienced too. We all value our opinion, and sometimes we that opinion come across, I don't know, but in a negative way, because the point that you're making about someone getting up, another channel that I watched, John, one of the hosts was talking about this band and rubbishing this band, and the other co-host said, "How many people were at the gig?" And he said, "Oh, about 1,000 people." And the co-host said, "That's probably 950 people more than you've ever played in front of."
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm sitting there with about 50 other people watching a YouTube show where a co-host is saying this to his other co-host, and it's like, oh.
There's a reality check, isn't it?
Okay.
So if you're playing, and when I was very young and I started teaching guitar, a man called Harry Strang, who's not with us anymore, said, "John, when you go to play a gig, 98% of the material you're going to play is for the people. You can play 2% of your own stuff if you want to. But on your head, it's going to work or not." And that was a valuable lesson. That's just another one of those signposts, And of course, we all know very popular musicians. They don't, we know this guy called Tim Armstrong. He plays. Yes. He writes great songs. He's a great musician, but he plays what the people want to hear. And before I left Dunedin, the last gig I did, I played to 35,000 people.
Yes.
That was a big gig for me.
Did you hear that, people? 35,000 people.
It sounds like a lot. We were booked to play. I'm not denigrating the gig, but we were booked because of what we did. We were playing original music as well as covers, but we played for the Dunedin City Council and area in the Octagon for New Year's Eve, and they booked us because of what we did. But most of it was because we played covers, and a lot of the covers we played were Kiwi covers. So people relate to it.
Well, I'm a fan of Tim Armstrong. Tim Armstrong, if you're ever watching this show, Tim in the future is from the Waikato. Yeah. The Politicians were a hot band that played live. So I'm old enough to remember when you went out here in Hamilton to nightclubs to chase the girls. It was live music it was live bands that were playing, not DJs or discos. It was, and the Politicians were that band at the Lady H, which became Shakes, and they were a hot band.
I've seen them on video because their stuff on YouTube comes up now, so it's
hot band.
Yeah,
and they were playing all the top radio hits, man. I just can't believe actually, and my friends and I would sit down and have a couple of beers and watch the band and go, man, these guys sound like the record.
Yeah. And that's what this is the funny thing about being a musician. You get to see and hang out with these people. But the thing that I always followed is I never followed the covers bands. I always followed the bands that were kind of doing something left field.
Yeah.
But not so much left field that it was. I mean, I
that you were playing in front of 5 people at Otago University.
Yeah, not that kind of left field. But I still appreciate those people. And,
yes.
They're all. I know most of those guys, and we've all dealt with each other in different ways. But the thing is, I always look for the guys. There was a band called Junction Ave that used to play a lot at Queenstown, and they had a guy called Kipper Royale playing in that band. Man, that guy could play guitar.
Wow.
I mean, he was phenomenal. And he's still around, he's still playing. And we were lucky in Dunedin because Dunedin was very isolated. So Hamilton, if you want really hot music, you can go out and set in Hamilton itself, or you can go to Auckland, it's not that far. But in Dunedin, the pop musicians hang around Dunedin. They didn't go and play in Auckland because it was too far to go. So all the gigs that were local, we had this very high standard of musicianship.
Yeah, awesome.
And that was one of the best things about living down there. So you got dragged up. If you messed up, they'd just fire you and find something else that could do, because there was plenty of good talent down there.
So let's just check out and see if there's any questions in the chat, John. So just hold on, guys. Sorry.
Yep.
I've been too busy gas bagging, talking to John. Oh, here we go.
It's all over.
It's all over. Hold on.
That's not a bottle top.
I remember the days of seeing tapes on the side of the road too. Same, so he remembers that as well. You have a friend in California. I'm listening, but Ted run down chasing my kid, or rather, she is chasing me. That's from Nelson. You can make good money playing in those wedding bands, of course.
Yes.
Of course you can. Nelson's saying, but you are right about being in a covers band. Lots of songs that I'm overplaying them, but there may be someone in the crowd that loves that song as well as a person who's never heard a certain song.
That's exactly right.
Yep. Arvin saying you got to switch to paper plates. Like, okay. So that's just something that those guys are having a chat about. Yikes! I'm always wondering what the energy coming off a crowd. Yeah, so Arvin's asking, what's it like playing in front of 35,000 people?
It was phenomenal. That was my last gig in Dunedin ever, my last gig, and nobody knew that I was leaving town apart from the band.
Oh wow!
And so we never made a big deal about it. I just left town. I just finished playing the gig, and the band just went, "Oh, see it." That was it. We didn't even say goodbye. It was weird. It was one of those surreal experiences, and it was like, "See you guys, yeah, okay." And then we just
key to the highway,
and that was
out
it.
The door.
And and I was so lucky because when I moved to Hamilton, I got to work at Shearer's, and I got to meet all these musicians. And so I was like, this is going to be really hard because I'm going to come from one town to another, trying to get to play with other people. Nobody's going to want to play, and I realised it's a closed shop. It's like any town. It's like you try and start joining a football club when you're 30.
Yep.
And I tried that and it was a failure.
Yep. Because
all these people have been with each other for 15 years.
That's correct.
So they're very suspicious of new people. So, the first few bands I started when I first got here was people that were from out of town.
Wow.
Because I couldn't find Johnny Stash. There was 3 guys that weren't from Hamilton. So one was from Oregon and one's from Bristol.
Wow.
So that's I formed these bands because all the bands were already formed, So you try and and you might get the odd phone call, come and help us out, but of course that they were already set. Bands are families.
Yes.
And that's the thing about bands. You can't just push your way in, because if you push your way in, that means somebody's pushed out. So you don't want to divorce.
No. So have you done any recording recently since you've been in Hamilton?
Oh yes.
Yep.
So Johnny Stash did we did a CD.
Yep.
I've been recording. I've got gear at home, so I've been writing songs and recording. I did a lot of stuff in lockdown, and I've been recording on other people's recordings. So Nikki Moran, I've done about 3 albums with her doing guitar parts.
So maybe you can later on give me some information and some links maybe, and I can attach them to this to this YouTube clip. So if anybody is watching this on playback and wants to check out what John's worked on, I'll attach some of those links to the show later on. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean that's and there's probably other stuff. I mean, back in Dunedin, we had a band called Zero Tiger, and we did a CD for that. Wow. And the thing was, we never ended up in debt with that. Most of the songs album was original music that I'd written, and we put out like 200 tapes and about 100 CDs, and we sold them all. And that's good because there was no debt.
So this is a question I like to ask songwriters. So you write a song, you've got some chords, you've got this riff, you've got this feeling, this experience, something's happened, it's motivated you to put something down on paper.
Yep.
And you have to give that to somebody else to sing to, or a bass player to work out a bass riff to. So, how do you feel about giving a song that you've written to people? Is that something easy for you, or is that a difficult thing?
Well, people, sometimes it depends on who you're giving it to. And if they are another songwriter, it can be quite hard because you're going to feel judged when you're presenting a song to someone. So you're going to be nervous. So usually sometimes what you show them is not necessarily what you want, but you're so nervous that you sort of stumble through it. And then if you're playing with other people that are quite intuitive and are on your side, then they're going to probably get more out of that experience, and they'll probably draw you out better. So I mean, yeah, there's two sides to it. So I'm now playing with Matthew Bannister. I'm just playing bass with Matthew, and he's a great singer, and I really admire his skill. And I've tried to show him a couple of my songs, but I know that I haven't presented them in a way that he would. I just felt it wasn't wrapped right, you know what I mean? So I need to find a different way to show people things sometimes, you know. So if you've got a recording, if you can go home and record it all on your laptop or whatever you do, it's so much easier because you can just give that to someone. That's exactly what I want you to do. Can you hear that part? That's all I need. So if you get people that can play by ear, it's fantastic. If you have to write out for people, that's fine. You just got to find out how people play and how people learn, you know. So yeah, it's.
The reason why I asked that is because you know, Kurt Cobain, for example, you know, as an example, didn't want to give any of his songs because, you know, and I suppose it's the person he was too, that vulnerability, because he was given a bit, you know. Yeah. And you know, and we know there's a whole history of guys in rock and roll that didn't want to do that, you know, that were kind of forced by the rest of their band guys, you know, come on, yeah, you know, to
show us what you got.
Yeah. But you know, you look at Lennon and McCartney, for example, they were writing songs together, right together from an early age, so there was no vulnerability, I don't think, from them. But I think it's fascinating and amazing that people can be inspired by whatever to write a song. I take my hat off to anybody who's a songwriter.
Exactly, and you don't know who the song is for, because I think we challenge channeling things. And I remember writing a song about a guy that I'd never met, but I had a feeling about. And we went to a prison, and I played this song in prison. And this cat came up to me and says, "Can I have the words to that song?"
Wow.
And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because that song's about me."
Wow.
And that was like, wow. And it wasn't, to me, it was just a song. But it was special in the sense that I was playing it. And then, of course, he took the words away, and I never had the words, so I had to kind of rewrite the song. It was a bit of a pain. But I'm saying, I think as songwriters, we just, you know, sometimes these are messages. Like, I mean, I believe in prophecy, I believe in things like that. So sometimes these things are prophetic. It's a prophetic art. And it's like some of the stuff that Bob Dylan writes. I mean, man, he nails it, you know, and sometimes he's singing it beforehand or afterward. And those sorts of things just blow me away. And how to put it in writing.
I'm glad. Okay, it's interesting that you should mention Bob Dylan, because I've said it before on the show. I haven't been the world's greatest Bob Dylan fan.
Oh, he's amazing.
But listen, because you can. Okay, give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So I watched a documentary, Robbie Robertson's documentary about the band. And it's, if you guys have seen it, check it out. It's fascinating. It only came out last year. So this is how recent my Bob Dylan thing is going. So, and Robbie Robertson is talking about how, you know, they got together, you know, with the Hawks, whatever, back in the, and then they became Dylan's band, and then they went to the Woodstock with the Big Pink, and they're writing the songs for Big Pink, which is a famous album that I've been listening to for 10 years.
Yep.
Okay, so we know about that. But what was really interesting is that Eric Clapton came along to the Big Pink and said, let's go and jam. And they turned around and said, we don't jam, we write songs. If you want to come down, to wherever they've got everything set up, we write songs. So anyway, and then Robbie's talking about how Bob Dylan came, and and he recorded like basement tapes, which I've just listened to. Phenomenal. Just so we're listening to a guy, and these other guys, Canadians, and Garth, and who's the guy, Manuel?
Richard Manuel.
And I'm going, my gosh, John.
Phenomenal. Yeah. Well, that was the last waltz. I saw that when I was 16. Blew my mind.
Yeah. So, look, I've heard John Hardley Wears thing. I've heard the albums, don't get me wrong. And you're hearing a type of Bob Dylan, a version of Bob Dylan, because he's got all these, but those basement tapes of these guys just hanging out and just, phenomenal. So is that something that you do in your situation with the guys that you hang out with? Are you guys jamming, or are you guys writing songs? Do you go with an idea, or is it something that you guys all just throw in together?
When I write a song, I usually have the whole structure sorted.
Okay.
Then I present it to a band. So my band, the Swamp Dogs.
Yeah.
So we do a few originals, and they sort of that came from me saying, these are the songs. I'd show them. One time I'd just teach them on stage. It was that simple. Wow. But other time we'd have a rehearsal, and I'd say, well, this is how the song goes, and then they would make up their bits. So I mean, that's how it works. It depends on the people. I think you just got to know. Some bands want to be shown everything. Some bands want to be part of it. Some bands want to create their own parts. Some members of the band want to, you might have a bass player. Oh, that's a bit boring. I want to come up. I've got this idea. I go, well, that's good. Go with it. That's how it works. Depends on the person, really. So
is it a compartmentalization in your life as a musician, from being a songwriter, a recording artist, and performing live? Are these things that you have a different mindset in, or is it just you just go there and you're John Maydon?
Well, it depends what people are asking me to do. If I'm playing at the Navarra Lounge downstairs, that's me doing my thing. That's my art. Okay. So I'm playing what the band is wanting to play, but we're not playing to it's not a dance band. So that's in one box, whereas Rockaholics is a party band. Okay. So that's the difference,
I'm just checking up, seeing what we've missed. So there's no questions in the chat. So that's rolling along pretty well. So that's pretty good. So is there anything on the future, for John, as far as? Yes. Is there anything that you want to share with us?
Well, with the lockdown, one of the things I got out of that was, I think a lot of people had epiphanies in the lockdown.
Big time.
So one of the things I decided I wasn't going to do, I wasn't going to play bars anymore. Wow. Now that was a big decision for me, and I've been throwing this around in my head a lot.
Wow.
And
that's a big story, guys.
But when I mean playing in bars, I mean beer halls.
Yeah.
I'll play I'd be happy to play in a more like a cafe style thing where people come and listen.
Sure.
But I'm not interested in
just being background to music for people getting booze.
I'm not interested in watching. Yeah, I call it. I'm not really interested in basing someone else in my age children.
Okay.
And I mean, I will still go and play private clubs because I think that's different, because I think people go there for different reasons, and it's a social thing, I think the bar thing too is an age time too. You finish playing the bar, by the time you get home, you're 3 o'clock in the morning, your ears are ringing. It takes you to unwind, and then you got to find what are you going to do for the rest of the day when you probably just want to sleep? So you lose a lot of downtime, and because my body doesn't bounce back like it used to, there's lots of reasons not to. Lots of reasons to do if you're young and you want to get out there, but it's always the same. At 12 o'clock at night, wouldn't matter what country you're in, they're probably playing the same song. They're probably playing Gambler or Wagon Wheel or something like that. And they're great songs. They're fantastic songs. I all power to those people that wrote those songs. But I don't want to just keep reproducing the same thing for no real reason. I think there has to be more depth to your music. And of course, if you're a songwriter, I think I need to put more of me into it rather than.
Well, Wagon Wheel, one of those Bob Dylan songs,
Fantastic song.
and the bass,
I love the song.
Just a little ditty that he.
Yeah, and we had no idea when we first played it that it was such a popular song. We heard what's that?
I believe you.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a popular song.
I believe you.
We had a fiddle player, and we heard this band. They're a bluegrass band. They're Southern boys, and they came out with this song on their album, and we thought this is a great song. So we learnt it, and the next minute, all these people saying, "Oh my goodness, we have to play this awful song called Wagon Wheel." What do you mean it's awful? We really like this song. We love it. And we had no idea because we weren't playing in bars. We were just playing in a cafe.
Wow.
So we were playing as a performance piece, not as a fall over your girlfriend, vomit in the gutter sort of song.
Yeah.
And there's a difference.
That's interesting.
It's a great song.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of the gear that you've got here? While you're doing that, and there's a camera there, I'll grab us some. I know. I promised John that I couldn't pay him, and I've reneged. I said that I was going to give him a Coke, but I've only got cold water. So I'll grab him a water while he tunes up and tells you a bit about his guitar.
Okay, so this is just a Seagull. It's just a great guitar. This is the one I'm probably going to play if I play anything. But I've also got another. I get given guitars now, which is really nice. I can't afford to buy my own guitars, not like when I was young. But one of my mates made this guitar for me, which is really, really cool. And everyone should have one. Which is a 4-string guitar or a 3-string guitar.
You want some water?
Look, you can play after midnight with it. Think about it.
Can you guys hear that? It's going through a Marshall stack.
Yeah, the biggest band. So this is a great guitar for people that have never played guitar. Well, this is a good way to start.
Wow.
Because you can play a chord with one finger. He's tuned it, so it's sort of status quo.
Yeah. So Arvin's got a Seagull acoustic too.
Great guitars, beautifully made. Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, solid, strong. So that's a Scarbox guitar, made in Dunedin. How about that?
Wow.
Have a tour around. And it's got a dog bowl, radius.
Where's your slide?
There's a slide.
Slide?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
I love it. This is cool. Fantastic. Can I take that home? That's beautiful guitar.
So there you go. These are made in Dunedin. Roll Shulton. If you ever want one, RS Guitars. Yeah. There's a candid bit of fake advertising. He needs to go off his butt and make some more instruments.
So does he have a website?
He's on Facebook.
Okay, so if anyone's interested in what this guitar is, we'll have the links to the Facebook.
That's Remu, New Zealand Remu. Look at that.
In the description, I promise. Eventually, when John gets them to me.
Yeah, so there you go.
But yeah, I think I need one.
I can get you one.
I want one.
I know the guy that makes them.
Okay. Do you want to have a? You might have to have some water.
Oh, okay.
Some water. That's
Apparently
right.
I have to have water.
Yeah. I don't want them. There's no gin. There's no vodka or anything like that.
It tastes like water.
No.
I live in the country, so my water comes straight out of the ground.
That's filtered. It's filtered water.
It tastes like country water.
Yeah. Okay. It's not tap water.
Yeah.
But so how long have you had this for?
So I've had this guitar for about 2 years. So.
And you gig with this?
I do. We play it. I usually play one song a night on it. So it's just because I've already learnt most of the stuff on an ordinary guitar. We find special things to play on this.
Wow.
So we do that. You gotta move. I don't sing that one. My wife sings that one. But C6 Steve does it with the great version of Tom Jones. Tom Jones is a fantastic blues singer.
Really?
He's amazing. Blues before he became. Delilah became famous, but what a great artist.
Wow.
Yeah. Not many people know that. Well, people that know Tom Jones know that. But he can really sing the blues.
Oh, okay. Well, so we have to check that out, guys.
Yeah,
Tom Jones singing the blues.
Yeah. So that he's on that Martin Scorsese series, British Blues. He plays with Jeff Beck. It's phenomenal.
Holy cow, you're right.
Yeah. So, and he came that period, but of course, it was all about selling records back in those days. So
Yeah.
he,
Yeah.
he did What's New Pussycat and Delilah and
all the famous Tom Jones songs.
yeah, all the great ones. Yeah.
So have you spoken about this one?
Well, this one was just something I inherited. So this is just by pure luck. It was in bits. It was bits of guitar. The bridge wasn't there.
Wow.
So and it was all split. And you can still see the split in it. It only had a couple of machine heads on it. It was an X guitar, and because we have a wonderful person called Gary at the shop, he spent about 2 days rebuilding it. So, and if he hadn't been there, I would have just walked away because the time and effort. Because I think these guitars only sold for about $600. So if you think about two days out, 2 days worth of labour at a reasonable hourly rate, it's
Yeah.
probably could have gone on and bought one for less. But because I work in a music shop, I have the advantage of not paying for any of that labour. So
That's right. He's always going to look after you.
yeah.
But there's obviously something, because we're all guitar players, whether or not the guitar we got's a $500 or a $600 earphone or a $4,500 Les Paul, it's something about that guitar that you like.
Well, it just sounds great in recording. It just has a really nice sound. And it's got all these scratches on it. And there might be someone out there that says, "Hey, that's my guitar. I gave it to somebody. I've never seen it." And if it is, write me a letter. I might give it to you. But this is
Well, no disrespect to your Seagull, but at least with your Seagull, you'd throw it in the back of your.
yeah.
But if you had a $4,500 Martin or a $6,000 Gibson, you wouldn't let Andrew touch it, would you?
No, that's right. You wouldn't.
You wouldn't take it anywhere.
But it's well built. It's well built. Great little guitars. Yeah, but I bet that guitar's got some stories. It probably tells you how it fell apart. It's probably a country and western selling that guitar,
So what year do you think this guitar is?
Oh, I don't know. No one really knows. It's just probably early 90s. Wow. Yeah. I think they were the first mass-produced successful guitars out of Canada. I don't know if that Canadian guitar manufacturing. Prestige Guitars, there's a good brand out of Canada, really high-end stuff.
So we've got another very good friend of the channel, Great Vanzini, saying hello to you, John. Great Vanzini is a hot jazz guitarist, a friend of the channel, and he's based in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
And I was asking, what is that pickup in your cigar box, please?
Oh, well, it's. I'm embarrassed to say, but it's just a knockoff from Express, and it's got. If you take it out, it says Seymour Duncan. So, but it's not a Seymour Duncan. But it works. It sounds fine. It's got a good sound.
So we've got Susie Cherry saying hello. She's another good friend of the channel, saying hello. Just when I thought the night was over, Fender Guru, fun yay. So Susie's saying g'day.
Yeah. So what are you doing?
I'm just a blues man. I always play an E, brother.
Yeah.
You can go an A.
Yeah. Get an I'm going fast, you're going slow.
Oh, okay. I'm deaf. Ready?
What will you play? You want to do a little Red Rooster?
You can play it. I should go and get my resonator. That's beautiful.
I'm a Red Rooster, too lazy for today. I'm a Red Rooster. Come on, Andy. Too lazy for
No, I'm watching.
Ain't no fun in the barnyard. Let's go. Well, the dogs are in the bar. And the hounds. The dogs begin to bark. And the hounds begin to howl. Watch out, strange cat people. Andy Wolford, he's on the ground. There you go.
Fantastic. Hey, Susie, Deja Voodoo. That guitar sounds great, whatever that pick is.
Yeah.
Look, I think one of the classic things about cigar boxes is everyone always talks about a cheap pickup, John.
That's right. It's got to be cheap.
It's
It's
just
sound nasty.
yeah. I've watched guys on YouTube channels make these, and they just talk about getting a cheap lipstick.
Yep. The cheaper the nastier, the better. You know, put your telephone. Get an old telephone. Rip out the microphone out of the telephone. You know, they make really good pickups with things like that.
Fantastic. I think I need one. I've never. Can I just have another play with that?
Yeah, you hear me?
So Nelson saying that's very full. Yeah, I love that.
You wouldn't push Benson playing one, would you?
No.
No, he's too sophisticated. He might play one. That's what he started.
I can still do some keys for it.
Yeah.
Alright, just making around, but no, I like it.
But there are something that, you know, people should always have one. It's one of those things you always should have at least one. For that person that can't really play proper chords, they can just play a one-fingered chord.
Awesome. Okay, John, look, I appreciate your time. I know that we've been, how long have we been going for?
I've been going all my life.
We've been going for an hour. So would you like to come back and do another show with us?
Maybe at a later time, yeah. When I got time, that'd be great.
That would be good. That would be good if you could come back maybe before Christmas. And if you want to keep us in touch with what you're doing as far as anything you recorded during lockdown, and if you're going to release anything, is there?
Oh, it's more demos at this stage,
Okay.
but we've got to find a way of recording this stuff in Hamilton. You know, minimal fuss and a good budget. Yeah, good budget.
Gosh, this sounds good, eh? Can I borrow your slide?
Oh, man. What kind? You got choice of two.
Any slide. Any slide.
It's like the unthinking man's guitar, isn't it? You just make a great sound. No effort.
I love it. Great show, guys. Thank you, Arvin. I appreciate the fact that John has taken a bit of time to talk to us about his inspiration, his journey, because that's what we try to do with our channel. And if anybody in the chat wants to jump on with Simon and I and go live, obviously there's always an invitation open for anybody to come on and join us. But John said he'll come back. Maybe we can do a stream from your recording studio.
Well, possibly, yeah. I can set up. I've got an Apple Mac.
Yeah. Maybe that might be something that we can do in the future. Yeah. So, is there anything that you want to say, John, before we end the show?
Well, thanks very much for having me on, Andy.
Awesome.
Good to share, and I hope you guys keep doing what you're doing, and keep the music going, and keep it alive. It's all about, community, meeting people.
Yeah, well, and it's certainly about shared experience, because that's the key thing that I like. It's about organic fans and organic people offering their opinion. One of the things on that sort of catapulted Simon and I and Carl to do this too was always reading the perpetual urban myths that music journalists were always talking about. Like, for example, the biggest one that comes to my mind, because I'm preparing for the 50th anniversary show, was that Eric Clapton and John Maydon and everybody was smashed out of their brain when they recorded the Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs. It's completely untrue. They turned up for that 2-week period. They were on time. They were straight.
Yeah, Clapton works hard. He's a hard worker.
Yeah, they were not smacked. They were not taking drugs over the console in the recording studio.
Well, it's their business anyway, isn't it, at the end of the day? But they got a good result. Whatever happened.
Yeah. But even up until a couple of years ago, you still have people, in so-called music magazines doing, that kind of research, saying, that this is what happened. So our show, without sounding arrogant or whatever, is just about organic fans offering an opinion about, some of the urban myths out there and the experiences that you've got, and the lessons that we can learn. I appreciate the fact that you've told us a little bit about what you do as a songwriter, because that's something I'd like to talk to you more about, because I don't think we talk enough about that. It's one thing to talk about the band and playing live, but this is something I suppose maybe you have to think whether or not you want to share.
Yeah, well, songwriting is just a different part of it.
Okay, so everyone is saying, okay, well, John and I are going to go now. Thank you for hanging out.
Yeah, man.
If you have enjoyed anything John and I have said and you think it's worthwhile, please share this show with your friends. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you are watching this and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We'd like to build up our channel base to get 1,000 subscribers to help with running the Streamlabs account. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.
And we'll end the channel, end the broadcast.